It started with a town on the Oregon coast, quiet, isolated, and targeted by an enemy fleet that thought it was invisible. Tanks, armored vehicles, and hundreds of Marines were on their way to storm the beaches. But at 2:42 a.m., the invasion ran headlong into an American trap that had been waiting for days, a killbox designed to bury an army before it could touch American soil. This is the story of how 6 minutes reshaped military doctrine forever. Before we move on, I would like you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. How does an invasion force of 26 warships disappear in less time than it takes to finish a coffee? The Pacific that morning was supposed to belong to them. Ships stretched in formation for miles, bristling with weapons, a wall of steel moving toward the Oregon shoreline. Yet, in under 6 minutes, that armada turned into wreckage, smoke, and fire scattered across black water. The speed of the destruction caught even some of the American operators by surprise, not because the weapons failed, but because they worked with absolute precision. When the missiles began falling, they hit faster than human reaction could keep up with. Command screens in distant bunkers tracked every detonation, watching icons that had represented destroyers and carriers vanish one after another. By the time the last strike hit, waves of debris were already drifting apart. The formation shattered beyond recognition. From above, satellites recorded an area once covered by ships now filled only with glowing hot spots of fire. Entire crews were gone before they even understood they had entered the killbox. Those who survived found themselves thrown into the freezing Pacific, clinging to shards of metal and lifeboat canisters. Darkness surrounded them. Flames spread across giant pools of oil leaking from ruptured hulls, and the sound of explosions quickly ebbed into eerie silence. On the American side of the operation, not a single fatality was recorded. 2 minor injuries, both non-combat, stood in stark contrast to the hundreds who were now struggling in the water. Screens showed it all in real time, one side devastated, the other untouched. At dawn, helicopters swept in from nearby carriers. Their rotors thudded over wreckage as searchlights cut across the smoke. The scene below was still burning, oil slicks igniting whenever sparks or flames touched the surface. American crews maneuvered carefully, not only to rescue survivors, but to make sure none attempted to fire hidden weapons or set off mines. Every recovery was treated like an extension of the battle itself, disciplined and calculated. In the middle of this salvage effort, 3 men stood out. Senior Iranian officers were among those who had escaped sinking vessels, brought aboard American craft with little resistance. Still clutched in their hands were hardened tablets, military grade, their screens locked behind dense encryption. Crews secured them immediately, understanding that the data inside might be as valuable as the entire fleet that now lay at the bottom of the ocean. The imbalance of losses drove the message home. Hundreds of Iranian personnel had been killed. Many more were taken prisoner, while the American casualty list remained essentially empty. The aftermath looked less like a battle and more like an erasure, one force still intact, the other reduced to wreckage that covered miles of sea. Yet the most important development came not from the wreckage, but from the devices captured. Intelligence officers quickly realized those tablets could contain invasion timetables, maps, or even communications, exposing wider networks. Recovery specialists handled them with the same urgency as unexploded ordnance, rushing them into secure labs before the day was over. Quietly, suspicion spread through the American chain of command. Oregon was not the intended final goal. The victory, so decisive and brutal in its speed, turned out to be only a beginning. Within the encrypted tablets, evidence suggested this attack was designed as a first landing, one piece of a larger plan to carve a path of operations along the American coast. Oregon was the opening scene, not the conclusion. What could possibly be more explosive than the battle itself? The secrets uncovered afterward. Everyone focused first on the shattered fleet, the flames still burning at dawn, and the body count that turned into headlines. But inside those seized tablets carried off the broken decks was a second fight, the kind fought with code, data extraction, and long hours in sealed labs. Forensic teams worked with urgency, and within 36 hours, the locked digital files were cracked open. What appeared on the screens was chilling in its simplicity. Invasion schedules that spanned weeks mapped coordinates for not just one landing, but 2 more operations that had been planned to follow Oregon. Each site targeted vulnerable stretches of coast, less defended, meant to divide attention and overwhelm response times. The reaction inside American command centers was immediate. The world expected new naval engagements, chaotic pursuits across the Pacific, or even air raids launched in a rush to prevent reinforcements. Instead, the other armadas that had been readied were neutralized before their vessels even left their staging points. The U.S. had the luxury of striking at preparation zones, knotting the operation at its weakest point before momentum could build. The 6-minute destruction of the First Fleet was impressive, but intelligence showed that victory had to expand into the digital domain if the rest of the invasion was to be stopped. Battlefield forensics became as important as missile accuracy. Teams armed not with rifles, but with software pulled login histories, tracked communication chains, and matched the timeline of encrypted messages with satellite records. They did not only retrieve data, they mapped adversary intent in real time. By comparing ship positioning records stored on those devices with radar returns already collected, analysts confirmed that the Iranian fleet had attempted to outwit American surveillance by masking their patterns, varying speeds, and slipping through known blind spots. The failure raised larger questions far beyond Oregon. If a supposedly stealth fleet, carefully coordinated, could be destroyed and exposed so quickly, then how secure are any naval movements against a nation with layered sensors and rapid exploitation teams? The answer came in subtle but highly public ways. Pentagon briefings released high-resolution images showing vast oil slicks across the Pacific, some stretching for miles down current lines, shimmering evidence of the wrecks below. They were not shown for dramatic effect, but to hammer home a fact. Attempting to bring conventional invasion fleets against American shores was not just risky, it was suicidal. As these revelations sank in, analysts worldwide circled back to the Doctrine itself. The Killbox was no longer just an ambush tactic, it had transformed into a proof of concept. Surveillance that timed an enemy's approach, firepower delivered with precision to annihilate a formation in minutes, and forensic exploitation that dismantled the rest of the invasion plan before it could launch. Each element reinforced the others. This triad became a watertight doctrine more powerful than any single battle. It was a message beamed across the globe. Your encrypted communications, your stealth signatures, and your hidden arrival timetables are not enough anymore. Military thinkers took note. Reports from Europe, Asia, and the Middle East warned that the traditional model of massing ships for coastal strikes, a tactic unchanged for generations, had lost its relevance against nations capable of building and activating killboxes. The lessons drawn in Oregon did not remain an American secret. They spread, debated in academies, parsed by defense ministries, and feared by those still relying on large fleets with limited digital shielding. 6 minutes of precision fire reshaped more than a battlefield. It rewrote deterrence itself. What started as a near disaster on America's coastline became undeniable proof of layered defense, striking from surveillance to missile impact without a weak link showing. The message sent across oceans was as stark as the burning wreckage. Speed, coordination, and intelligence had fused into a weapon of deterrence. So the question now isn't how Oregon was defended, it's whether any coastal invasion is even possible when killboxes like these exist. Think about that. And let us know what future wars might look like when timing is everything.